Well, hi there. It's Wayne Kelly from Personal Bankruptcy Canada. And today we're going to be talking about personal debt amongst grandpa debtors. This is a huge problem for many Canadians. And to tell us about it and offer some solutions, we've got Sean Stack with us from Bromwich and Smith. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
Now, when we talk about grandpa debts, who are we talking about?
Well, typically that's a phrase that's been coined, I think, out of Ontario. And really, what it's referring to, it's just sort of a clever way to refer to those people that are in their golden years, their senior years, those that have spent the majority of their life saving up to get to that end where they could relax and enjoy the balance of their life, and instead. They find that they're mired in debt, and they're unable to pay their credit card debts back. And what was supposed to be designed to be their golden years is actually turns out it's pyrite. It's not gold at all. It's a terrible experience for them.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that a lot of this is getting worse. This problem is getting worse every year. So, what are some of the issues that they're having that is causing them to have so much debt problem?
Well, I would suggest probably the reason why it's getting worse every year is because we have an aging population, and as the population ages, their income becomes fixed, and as I'm sure you and all the listeners out there know, when you have interest, interest isn't fixed. I mean, it might be a fixed amount, but it's a fixed amount that is fixed against a principal that continues to grow, right? So if they're entering into retirement carrying any type of debt with them, the odds are they're not going to be able to sustain that debt while they're in retirement. Usually what happens is nobody really knows about it because they don't discuss it with their family. They certainly don't discuss it within their community. It's not just seniors that are doing that. It's actually most of all of us. We talk about our finances like we talk about the weather, as if it's something we have no control over, right? Went on holidays and it rained. Had a bad holiday. Well, when you're overburdened with debt, it's certainly not a holiday, and it's something that you can control, right? You can control that through, of course, not getting in it, but it's far too late at that stage. But it's really about looking at what the options are available to them. So credit counselors are talking with someone like myself or anyone else that's associated with Personal Bankruptcy Canada.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment. It's almost like, the time before we retire could almost be the training for when we do retire when it comes to cutting your spending back. But yet most Canadians are unable to do that. We love to buy, we pay monthly payments for just about everything, and then all of a sudden our income drops a little bit, and you can just see how this would start to snowball, that the debt would grow and grow and grow. And how do you get out of it when you're in that situation?
Well, when you're in a situation where you're actually unable to pay your debt back, it's referred to as being insolvent. And there's actually really two sort of tests to that. One would be the liquidation of assets. So if you were to sell your assets at a fair market value, you'd be unable to pay your debts back. And I think that a lot of folks, in the seniors, really were operating under the auspice that later on they're going to have their investments are going to be sufficient to not only pay their debt back, but that's going to be able to sustain them. And unfortunately, that didn't work out, right? So that one definition of the liquidation of assets, or basically the selling of assets to pay your debts, that's one type of insolvency. Now, the other type is actually the more common, which almost all of us here in Canada are sort of struck with, is the inability to actually fund your minimum monthly payments, right? Let alone pay the debt off, for heaven's sakes, right? Which that's a whole other kettle of fish. But just making the monthly payment, most of us, how we function is we function on, can I afford that monthly payment next month, right? Not can I afford that monthly payment for the rest of my life. One of the wonderful things that's happened is at the end of credit card statements, it's now it's legislated to tell you how long it's going to take you to pay off your debts, right?
And what's amazing is that sometimes, you're 70 years of age, you get a credit card that says it's going to take you 40 years to pay this off. Do people at that point just say, well, I'm not even going to bother?
Well, yeah, you would think that the credit card companies are eternal optimists in the healthcare system, that we're gonna stay alive that long. And the fact of the matter is, they're not looking at that end goal either, so to speak. It really comes down to making as much interest off someone as possible. And if they do sell their assets to pay it, great. If not, they'll look at seizing accounts and garnishing, and probably the worst part, I would suggest, is actually telephoning and harassing. And harassing is a pretty rough word, because if you were to talk to these, because I talk to a lot of seniors, it's tricky, because certainly it feels like harassment, but they feel this compulsion that they owe it, so they should be harassed in a lot of ways, is how it almost appears to them. So it's a terrible situation to be in, and unfortunately, a lot of our community suffers from that, and they suffer alone and in silence.
And so it's so important at this point for people to contact a bankruptcy trustee, because there are a lot of different options out there. Can we talk about a few maybe things that people could do if they're in this situation?
Yeah, what I would suggest, first off, is number one is don't be ashamed. Probably one of the worst things that can happen is that the shame of the situation, it actually just paralyzes someone from not being able to move forward. So and that's way easier to say, don't be ashamed, than actually do. But how you do that is you talk about it. I mean, this is what we're doing here, is really testament to talking about and normalizing this situation, because a lot of people, not just seniors, are in this circumstance. But with seniors, many people glom onto the hope of, I will make money in the future, my financial prospects will improve. With seniors that are on a fixed income, I think that if they were to say, I believe very much that I'm going to have an appropriate cost of living increase on my pension, I think we would suggest at that stage, wow, I think you're wrong at that. So let alone that you're going to be sufficient to pay this debt off. What I would suggest that they look at doing, first off, is really take a hard look at what the circumstance is. Is it reasonable that this will be paid off? And it's not something you have to do alone. You can talk with friends, and maybe you don't want to do that. Talk to a professional, for heaven's sakes, right? There's numerous professionals in this industry. There's credit counseling services that are available. There's many different companies that'll pop up. But personally, what I would suggest is that you talk with a trustee in bankruptcy. Much like the sponsors that are with Personal Bankruptcy Canada, I myself am a trustee in bankruptcy, and we don't just do bankruptcy. That's the ultimate end restructuring. When there's no other option, there's what are called proposals, where we just basically take a look at what would occur in a bankruptcy, and you just offer something better. So, because certainly the debtor knows, like, this situation is untenable and I can't correct it. Well, certainly the creditors know as well. They just need that they need you to come to the table, right? So
Yeah, I think it's really important that this discussion does happen, because people feel sometimes that they're the only ones going through this. And we want people to know you're not the only ones, and there is help there for you. And you do need to reach out, because I'll bet you somebody coming in this afternoon is going to be in the very same situation that you're going to talk to, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of times people, they don't understand necessarily how it happened, right? But notwithstanding that they don't understand how it happened, they certainly feel this responsibility for it. And what a nightmare situation to feel responsible for something that you're not sure how it happened, but you did it, right? And a lot of people think, well, I need to have that reconciled in me before I can come talk to someone, right? It's like going to the doctor, and the doctor says to you, well, how'd you hurt your neck? And you feel kind of foolish to say, I woke up, right? And they'll say, well, you had to do something. Well, I'll tell you, Wayne, a trustee, I'm not so much interested in how it happened so that I can put it on some moral scale of, yes, this is virtuous, and no, it's not. It's actually about saying, do you know how this happened, so we can help you develop the tools to avoid this in the future, and not just for you, but for your extended family, for the children that you have, and for the people that is within your community. Right?
Yeah, it's not always that it's just been major spending. Sometimes it could be something, a health issue that comes up, and all of a sudden your resources are used there. One thing I did notice, though, in doing a little bit of research on this, is that a lot of Canadians will think, well, maybe I should use my RRSP savings to get out of this situation. Can you address that point?
Oh, absolutely. it would seem to make a lot of sense, right? I mean, we have these RRSP savings, so they're registered retirement savings plans. And why do we have savings but for emergencies? And I can imagine no larger emergency than a collector calling me and saying, give me my money. That's a big emergency, right? Well, the idea behind bankruptcy is actually the rehabilitation of the debtor so that they're in a better place to be, or any type of restructuring, incidentally, under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. And the idea behind this restructuring is to say, you don't lose everything, because to strip someone of all of their assets isn't helping them at all. It's going to put them in a worse place, right? So although the act itself is federal, which is across Canada, each of the provinces is going to have a very different set of exemptions. But in 2009, Canada as a whole, under the federal legislation, exempted RRSPs, except that for which were included in the past 12 months. And the idea behind that is that, you know, you couldn't sell a non-exempt asset and then buy RRSPs on the eve of insolvency. But to take that money out to pay your creditors is madness, particularly if you're not paying it in full, right? You could actually use those to leverage a proposal, for example, right? You could say, well, in a bankruptcy, you guys aren't going to get any of this. I've got $60,000 worth of RRSPs. I want to avoid bankruptcy. You come see a trustee, you say, I'll offer, say, $15,000 of this, provided that it's beneficial to you and provided that it's beneficial to the creditors, and they agree to it. You're laughing, and you can restart that way. So terrible, terrible advice to say, take out your RRSPs and pay off your creditors. It's absolutely terrible.
I'm glad you shared that, Sean. What's your final bit of advice here?
My final bit of advice is if you're in a situation where, or actually even not just you, a member of your family, you suspect that they're having some difficulty with their finances, or they're relatively shut in about things, talk to them. You know, start the dialogue. The more that we can talk about this and the more that we can normalize this, the better off society as a whole will be, and the better off we'll get people to the right solution. And the right solution is talking to a bankruptcy trustee, like myself or any of my brothers and sisters that are sponsoring Personal Bankruptcy Canada.
Terrific. Sean, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic show, and I appreciate you being on it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
Got it. There's our guest today, Sean Stack from Bromwich and Smith, and you can get more information on our website, personalbankruptcycanada.ca.